do it again.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, I call the meeting to order. And we first have approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2022 meeting. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at it. Thanks to Rachel.
Make a motion.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor? Opposed?
Tom and Peter, can you hear us?
I hear you well, yes.
Yeah, I'm good too, Chuck, thanks.
We had a meeting here on Tuesday and it didn't come over very clear, so I just want to make sure everybody was hearing us.
Okay, there is no old business, is that correct? So we go right to none. There is none. Now we go to new business. And we have a resolution. Which one is first? We got three here, right? Oh, just one.
Just one.
Okay, resolution 22-4, resolution of the city of Binghamton, Water Street Development Corporation to authorize the president to establish a bank account with Tioga State Bank. Whereas the board of directors authorized to select each bank, such banks or depositories as shall deem proper for the funds of the corporation for the purpose of depositing all monies and other valuable effects of the corporation in the name and to the credit of the corporation. And whereas the city of Binghamton Water Street Development Corporation Board of Directors wish to designate Tioga State Bank for the purpose of banking for the corporation. And whereas a commercial checking account or other type of account as may be determined to be necessary by the treasurer will be opened in the name and to the credit of the city of Binghamton Water Street Development Corporation. And whereas the president shall be authorized on the corporation's behalf to sign checks, drafts, or other orders for payment of money, acceptances, rules of other evidence of indebtedness, enter into contracts or execute and deliver other documents and instruments. Now, therefore, the board of the directors of the city of Binghamton, Water Street Development Corporation, duly convened at the regular meeting, does hereby resolve, authorize the president to establish a bank account with Tioga State Bank. Questions?
Just for the record here, city council passed a resolution in this past thing so that we could use Tioga State Bank, or the city can. And I talked to Ron, what was it, probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. We basically do business with every bank in the city of Binghamton except for Tioga State Bank and Key Bank. So the right thing to do is add Tioga County or Tioga State Bank into the mix here. So that was our reasoning behind doing this. I don't know if anyone else has any questions.
Okay, do we have to vote on this?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Someone needs to make a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed.
The next thing on the agenda is I asked Peter Cornell, who works for Pike United Development Corporation, who's putting this project together, if he could give us an update. And we probably should, if we have these once a month, at least have Peter join us and give us an update on where we stand on this project.
Great.
So Peter, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, so let's start with demolition. I would say that the demo contractor is probably 6 weeks behind in his demo schedule. Some of the holdups were related to certain things that were going through the building that were unanticipated. There was fiber cable that had to be relocated. That took some doing to find a new location for that. We ran into some issues with a switchgear and transformer that belonged to NYSEG that happens to be sitting inside the garage. That was a little bit of a slowdown, and I just believe that the garage was more difficult to take down than Gord perhaps anticipated. That being said, they're moving along now. There are a couple of other issues as it relates to Boscov's in the demolition and what Boscov's would like to see. So if I get too into the weeds, just tell me, but there is a chiller, part of the HVAC system that sits up on the top floor of the garage that serves Boscov's. It is too fragile and not in great shape to be relocated. It is going to need to be replaced. So we have to kind of shore that framework up temporarily until that system can be replaced, and Gorick has to work around that. We've engineered that. That's in process. Mr. Boscov's wants to keep the parking over the men's store and own it. That creates some challenges with the levels of parking in your garage, trying to line these floors up. Specifically, it creates a 22-inch issue in height. And it's always been our thought process that you would come in at the grade level at Water Street and park at grade at the Water Street level, and that would be designated for retail or short-term parking. With the request from Mr. Boscov's, it creates this situation where we either drop that level 22 inches or we go above his parking by 22 inches and give him a ramp down onto the men's store. We've concluded in meetings yesterday that the least expensive approach is to put the speed ramp into Mr. Boscov's space, keep all that on his side, and keep your garage as originally planned. It's much better for the majority of the people. So 2 entrances into the garage are contemplated, one off Water Street and then one off Henry Street. When you look at the garage design itself, the parking along Water Street would be level. So when you look at what we call the spandrel panels, which are the panels that are visible from the street, they would all be level and horizontal to the sidewalk. And then on the back side of the building, they would be ramped at about a 5.5% grade, and people would park on the ramps. For the next meeting, I should have schematic drawings that I could share with the group, and you can see the progress plans of the drawings. Mr. Boscov's also requested that his parking be covered. The least expensive way to accomplish that is not to demolish the parking level above and simply make that a roof. So that was the adjustment to the Gorick contractor, leaving those pieces in place, assuming that Mr. Boscov's would then be responsible to maintain that and care for that going forward in the future. Drawings are progressing. The other big issue with this project is testing the existing piles. So underneath your garage are a series of, I'm going to call them H columns. You might refer to them as I-beams that were driven into the ground, and a cluster of 6 to 10 to 12 were then covered with concrete, what we call a pile cap. And then the floor was poured over that, and then your columns went from there, and that held your garage up. Once the floor is removed, then portions of the pile caps will be removed, and we bring in a piece of testing equipment that is literally a very large hammer that hammers those piles, and we see if they move. If they don't move, it's good news. If they move, it's really bad news. We can't size the footings and foundations for the new 10-story structure until we get that analysis done. We anticipate starting that analysis in the next 2 weeks. So I know I've kind of thrown a whole lot out there. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Hey, Peter, I want to jump in on one thing about Boscov's and the roofs, okay? What we're going to do is the precast that's over the roof right now and the second floor, we're going to treat them so they should be in good shape, okay? We're going to clean it all up. It's his responsibility going forward to maintain it, okay? And he understands that his option to buy that building, that goes along with buying the building, okay? He's going to make a contract with Laz to do whatever they need to do to like sweep it, to clean it up and stuff like that outside the city. They'll make a separate contract with them. But those precast things, if he wants to move them down the road or take them off, that's his responsibility, not the city's. And that's been very clear, been made very clear to him. Okay.
Is there much of a gain by him wanting these?
His big gain here, Peter, if you want to add to this, as I'm saying, is he wants people to be able to walk out of the building where they can right now, the second, third, fourth floor, and go to parking. Okay. We're going to be able to, I think, do everything except for fourth floor, but we may even be, we're going to keep the existing stair tower, build it around and make it bigger and stronger so someone can walk out of the third floor, walk down to the second floor and get in their car. That was his big thing, that he needs that entry exit way on that end of the store for people. Peter, you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think he's got a preconceived notion that the ability to walk directly into the parking garage from the multiple floors is a real retail advantage. But once you all changed Water Street and you put that on-street parking there, I mean, when we're there working and we're just observing, people pull right up Water Street, they pull into those angled parking spaces and they walk right in that men's store door. And you've got, over 40 parking spaces there. You'll have about 60 parking spaces on the first floor of the garage. Those are the easiest to get into and the most convenient. I mean, if I were Mr. Boscov's, I would focus on making a more dramatic entrance on the first floor of the parking garage into his men's store space, a glass wall like you see in a lot of other major cities where parking garages are attached to malls. The concept of driving around, getting up to the second floor, getting onto his roof deck, and then going into one of those elevated doors, I think is going to create too much of an issue for the parker or the shopper who just wants to get in and out of their car. That's just my opinion. He wants it, we'll do it. It's not adding cost to the city to accommodate him. There should be a credit from Gorick for not removing some of that work. The additional work of sealing that space and putting some drainage in is minimal. So I don't see a cost issue here. It's really a question of what entices Mr. Boskov to stay in Binghamton and keep that store. And I think that's what we're trying to do right now.
Peter, are we making the stairway up to the third floor or fourth floor?
Currently it goes to the fourth floor, and that's what he wants. We're going to leave the existing stairs, open stairs, in place. We're going to put a new roof over the top of it as part of the reconstruction of the garage. And we're going to basically clean up all the work that's there and dress it up, but we're not building a new stair tower. We don't need to.
Anybody else have any questions?
I answered both of mine.
Tommy or Chris, you got any questions?
Oh,
Chuck, I'm good.
just time frame. We're 6 weeks behind in demolition. But these add-ons, are they gonna cost us more time?
Well, the real issue in construction now, I mean, if you read the paper and everything that's going on, cost of fuel, held up deliveries and so forth. I mean, it could create further delays. The problem that we're having with most subcontractors and people that we deal with now are really delivery dates. We've had a very good relationship with Unit Stress. They did your Holly Street garage. They've been in touch directly with the city. They are keeping production space open for this garage when they get final drawings. But I can't sit here and tell you specifically dates just because I can't get them from anybody that works for us anymore. And we have steel contractors that are holding prices for 48 hours. We have a very large project in Rochester, New York, a 250,000 square foot warehouse building for a company called Lifecycle. It's about a $70 million project. Lifecycle has written checks for $32 million in advance of us starting buying steel, HVAC equipment, long lead items, because you just can't get manufacturers and subcontractors to hold pricing or hold production without being paid in advance. And typically, a municipality or somebody like us doesn't like to do that. We don't like to pay for things in advance. We want to make sure we're going to get them. So that's a long-winded answer to tell you there's going to be delays. The magnitude of those delays will determine that once we test the pile caps and we know what we have to do with the foundations. If they're acceptable and we can just build off of them, it'll go very quickly. If we have to add additional piles, buy more steel, add concrete to the job, that will add time.
Peter, I just wanted to add that, as you know, I live downtown, so I drive by that, the site, not every day, but I'd say several times a week. And I think Gorick is doing an outstanding job with the demolition under, Pike's supervision. I think that project has been very methodical. It's been done very safely. Just the demolition to date really changes the landscape and skyline downtown, just like the demolition of the Collier Street ramp has done. The addition of those parking spots, which was an idea that came from Pike, really, I think has changed Boscov's operation to the better. I see people coming in and out, all day as well. Hopefully the city will keep that down the road. But it's just nice to see multiple excavators on a daily basis, very methodically and safely doing that demolition. It's clear that even though they're behind, it looks close to being completed. I'm just wondering, is there any update on the housing side of it as well? I know that we're a ways away from that starting, but I'm just curious if there's anything new to report, or is that just kind of with the status quo on the housing part?
So a couple of things. One, I agree with you on Gorick. We're knocking buildings down all over the place. We don't just build. We get things out of our way and build. And I have to say that Gorick is probably one of the best demo contractors we've worked with, and we like them very much. Very accommodating, very easy to work with. And you're right about a neat, clean site and a very safe site, which is very important. So those guys have been doing a wonderful job and very easy to work with. Michael Ussolini has signed all of the contracts for the apartment design above the garage. He's committed to spending over $500,000 in advance, not knowing where his construction costs are going or what's going to happen, 6, 8, 10 months from now when he's ready to start his construction. So pretty gutsy move on his part. He's determined that he's going to build these things. So I think that's all very positive, Mayor. And we're happy to be his partner. He's got a lot of guts.
Yeah. Would you, next time you talk to him, please convey the thanks of myself and the board, for doing that. We recognize, based on the circumstances you just outlined with supply chain issues, we're seeing other projects locally, regionally, nationally get scuttled or significantly delayed because of dramatic increases in costs. And it's very clear that United and Pike are operating with a long-term vision in place and are trying to mitigate as many of those obstacles in advance as possible. And I think the project is better off for it. And clearly this is the largest project, largest private project certainly public-private partnership in the modern history of the city. So it's just great to see that, you know, in the one of the most toughest times, most challenging times to actually implement a project like this. I mean, this would be challenging in the best of times, but in the fact that in the post-COVID era that you're able to have these successes, I think really speaks volume to both Pike and United. So I just want to thank you for that.
Hey, Peter,
We appreciate it. We're excited about it. It's going to be a great project.
Peter, one thing I didn't talk to you about lately is that HVAC equipment that we're buying from J&K.
Yes.
Time to get that delivered, because I heard this week the one at the sewage treatment plant, it's a 40-week lead time, and I know the one that we were buying was only like a 13-week at the time. I just want to make sure we're still on schedule so we can get that air conditioning working at Vasquez.
The last conversation I had with those folks, I want to say, was 3 weeks ago, and they have not adjusted any delivery dates or schedules. But Chuck, again, to be very frank about these things, we've had deliveries that on the day of the contracted delivery, we get a notice that it's, you know, another 30 days out. So until it's in our possession and on site, I wouldn't count on anything.
And the other thing for everyone to be aware, when we originally talked to Vasquez on this, we thought that we would have the first floor opened up in October. Okay, I could tell you that's not going to happen. Okay, and a lot is still depending underneath the best scenarios right now. That will not happen.
What is it now?
We don't know. That's what Peter was saying. But being 6 weeks behind, there's no way. We can't start at the earliest we can get product right now that Unistress told us is late August, September. That there's a lot of dependencies to that too.
You mean when they would start erecting the garage
Yes,
as August or September?
yes.
Okay.
So we'll work with Boscov's and obviously the city on the sequencing, and
Christmas.
Yeah, did that.
Well,
if we have to create subsequent parking areas for them somewhere, we could certainly figure out a way to do it.
And the on-street parking is going to be,
Yeah,
we just got to do a good job monitoring it.
right.
Okay, and I will say the police are doing a very good job with it. The only thing that we're probably gonna have to change the ordinance because it's only during daytime hours, really, those 2-hour things. We're gonna have to include it to be night because a lot of students are parking there. And that's causing problems first thing in the morning for Boscov's.
So Peter, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but for the holiday season, like for example, during the demolition, some of those spots needed to be taken in the beginning to accommodate, the excavators and, other equipment prior to the excavators moving on site. So around Christmas time, do you envision that all of the Water Street spots on both sides would be usable? Or would some of those still be occupied for cranes and, other ancillary equipment as part of the erection of the garage?
The current plan is the crane will be in the middle of what was at one time the parking garage, and then we'll be building from Boscov's towards Henry, and we'll back that crane out of the site. The issue will be when they're lifting large panels close to Water Street. We'll have to look at the safety standard and see where, if a cable snaps, where it might land, and then those parking spaces would be blocked at that moment in time. But we're talking about blocking spaces for hours, not days.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing that we'll look at is the sequencing of this whole thing, and if delaying erection is better for Boscov's, we can do that. We've already talked to Unit Stress and the crane operators about that. If speeding it up and working, 6 days a week or 7 days a week makes a difference, we have that option as well. So we'll be obviously in touch with this committee on a regular basis. And as things start to unfold, we'll make decisions together that work for everybody.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have any other questions, Chris?
See if he's still there.
His phone is.
Peter, thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, I'll exit out. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So there's no mayor remarks. Is there a president's remarks or chairman?
No, I think we see that we've got Black Thunder. They're great to work with, and we have an experience working with them. And
Pike is phenomenal.
questions were answered.
Yeah.
The delays are delays. You can't do anything about it, but best case scenario, next spring.
It's exciting. It's exciting that everything is still on track. And it's gonna
And
happen.
Boscov's didn't lose business during
No.
this.
And actually, Peter didn't say one thing. The price of precast is coming down. Okay,
Okay.
which they may be able to precast the housing units too, so we'll all color code with the garage.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wonderful.
Would they be erecting that at the same time?
Yes,
That's interesting. That would save them a ton of time.
they were gonna go to a different type of material because lumber was so high at
They
one
don't-
time.
Yeah, so they don't necessarily have to wait for the ramp to be done to start the housing. It would all be, it'd be one, parts of it,
Yes,
parts of it.
it's gonna have to go up on the top.
Yeah, right. But I mean, parts of it would continue with the, okay, great. Before full occupancy of the ramp.
Yes.
So, excellent.
Sounds great. Anybody else? See you next meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Third,
Thanks.
fourth, fifth,
All in favor? Aye.
seventh.
Thank you.
Hey, see you guys.